welcome to the Workshop Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew, and joining me today is the Earl of XYZ. How's that?
Great.
Joining me today is EarlIII.XYZ on Instagram. That's just how it is, right?
Yep.
I think. Anyway, joining me from the sunny Southland. And so how you doing today?
Had better days, but it's overall been a productive day, so that's good.
Yeah, I guess that's always the challenge of how you measure good days, eh? Like, do you measure it solely by your productivity, or do you measure it by how you feel, or do you measure it by how it's cold outside?
Yeah,
All of those different.
depending on how you want to look at it. It was a very stressful day, very busy day. Didn't see a whole lot of sunshine today, but it's okay. I'm content. I got a lot accomplished, and go right into another busy day tomorrow. But it's just a busy time of the year, and so stress is a little high at the moment. Really busy with a lot of things, but I'm happy, healthy, and I'm here.
Well, it's always good. That's you talk when you end up talking to a lot of people. There's always that different. There's two groups of people. There's the half full, glass half empty type of people, right? And the people who that you can always find something to complain about, and those people are frustrating to talk to because everything's always terrible, and I had to work so hard at work, and I had to do this and I had to do this, and no time to myself. And sometimes it gets like, yeah, so you're alive like everybody else. You have
I
commitments
like to
too.
tell myself, and a lot of times when other people ask me how I'm doing, I say I can't complain, and then I'll follow it up with, well, I could, but it won't do me any good. So, I try not to complain too much.
Yeah, that's something I'll often say is people ask, "Oh, how you doing?" And I'll always say, "Well, I'm not dead." And you tend to get two responses to that. You get either the, "Oh, that's good," or you get the, "Oh no, that doesn't sound good." And it's like, well, it's better than being dead, is it not? Like, as
Yeah,
long as if you set your bar right at the bottom, then everything past that's good. So as long as I wake up alive, then I guess the rest of the day was a success.
yeah. I took so I'm half Filipino, and so I took a introduction to Tagalog course. It was like a little crash course thing that um, I had an opportunity to take through work. And in this class, we learn it's like 10 sessions, so it's not very long. Um, they kind of teach you how to say some pretty basic things, and one of them is like, "How are you?" And they give you a few different responses. You can say like, "Oh, I'm good," or things like that. They're like, in the Philippines, people like to save face, and so they don't like to admit that things are going bad. And so one of the things that they will say if you ask a Filipino person how they're doing and things aren't going great, they'll say "buhay pa," which means still alive. It means that things aren't really going all that great, but I'm still alive. So, it's kind of like in the same vein as what you were saying.
Yeah. Well, that's that's where, like, we're honestly pretty blessed to live in North America. To be honest, most of the things that we have to complain about are really first world problems. Like, oh no, I had to work all day so I could come home to my air conditioned house and order in food from Uber Eats. You know, it's but we when we lived in BC on our ranch, we had satellite internet, right? And it had this terrible lag. But when cell phones started getting the ability to do the Wi-Fi calling thing, we're like, oh, let's see if we can handle this on uh, on our cell phones. Then we can get rid of our landline and not have to pay that as a bill. And so then we start using it, and there's that 1 second satellite lag, and I just couldn't handle it. And I thought, oh, this is so irritating. And then afterwards, I realized this is the dumbest thing to be complaining about. Like I can literally talk to somebody on the other side of the world through space, and I'm complaining about a 1 second lag. You know, how
Yeah,
absurd is that? Mm.
yeah. But it's all a matter of perspective. So, like you said, we are blessed to have a lot of these things that our problems are just first world problems. But sometimes you just got to give yourself grace and say that, like, yeah, it's a first world problem, but it's still something that I have to deal with. So, um, you know, there's all there's always those people who, when you say that you're having a bad day, they always have a worse day than you. And
Yep.
that's always going to be the case, no matter who it is. Even that person that just said they had a worse day than you, somebody in the world is having a worse day than them. Um, Only one person in the whole world can have the worst day ever. Uh, so, sometimes it's just perspective. Allow yourself to have the grace to have a bad day and through what those other people are saying.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Anyway, so a couple questions for you about just kind of doing the scrolling through your feed there, trying to remember everything that you make. And what's your favorite thing to do in the shop? What's your favorite thing to make?
Depends on the day. These days, I want to say that turning on the lathe has been my like happy place. Probably because it's the new shiny thing, right? Like I just got the lathe not too long ago. Of course, it was secondhand, but it's okay. I'm learning how to use it, and I'm making things that I've never made before, and it's fun. So, I'm making pins and random things that you know who knows what it is, but it doesn't matter. I turned it from something rectangular shaped to cylinder shaped, and made it interesting. Um, just seeing what all I can make with the lathe. So I made a couple crochet hooks or attempts at crochet hooks for my wife. I've tried making little bowls and things like that out of like scrap wood. Scrap wood and free stuff is usually the things that I like to play with because it's low risk, low stakes. If I screw it up, I just throw it away, do something else. Um, and so that's kind of what it's been lately. Over the years, it's been a little bit of everything. So like it's new to me. It's more interesting than something I've done a whole bunch of times. Um, yeah, it just depends.
Kind of have that maker ADD like the rest of us, right? It's the new shiny tool.
Yep.
But yeah, turning stuff on the lathe though is fun. That's there's something satisfying about, yeah, you take that square block of material or round block or piece of whatever, and for the most part lathe projects are something that you can stand at the lathe for an hour, and when you're done you have a thing,
Yep.
versus like bigger pieces of furniture, you stand in front of your planer for an hour, and then you still have 30 or 40 hours of work to go before you get to the end of the project.
Yep. That's another one of those kind of roadblocks for me when it comes to making things. A lot of the things that I like to make are typically smaller for those reasons. I like having something completed where I don't have to work on it again in the future or worry about it in the future. I like being able to get to that point within a weekend at the very least. Because if it goes past the end of the day or even um, the weekend, the likelihood that I'll get back to it and finish it drops every evening that I have to stop. So I haven't done anything big yet. I originally told myself I was going to try to tackle this coffee bar build that I've been promising my wife for a little over 2 years now, for the Working Hands Make What You Fear project. And with things being busy at work and not having a whole lot of time in the evenings and only having weekends, but that's also time that I have to do like chore stuff, the things that I can't get done in the middle of the week. I'm wondering if I bit off a little bit more than I can chew. So we'll see. Want to do something for Make What You Fear, but I might have to go back on what I originally committed myself to.
Well, it's um, you've heard the saying, "How do you eat an elephant?
Yep.
One bite at a time."
Yep.
You know, and I think that's the thing about challenges like the Make What You Fear one is. I mean, I'm still going to attempt to get some power carving done, but when I committed to do the power carving thing for it, like we weren't my shop wasn't listed and we weren't actually thinking of selling the shop at that point. Well, we were, but it was like, okay, let's do this in the spring. And then everything kind of started falling into place, and now I have like a month to have it all cleaned out. So I don't know if I'll actually get to my project either because I got a bunch of more important stuff to do. No offense to Keith and Tony, but
Yeah.
yeah. So when I
Yeah.
started talking to you originally about having you on the show, you said you'd been recently diagnosed, like adult diagnosed with ADHD. Do you think that kind of plays into that need to get something done quickly, or?
Um, Possibly. So, as I've learned a lot about ADHD and how that manifests in people, and I learned for the first time in my 30 plus years of like memory of thinking, like I don't think a 4 or 3 year old's gonna like actually realize things. So I'm not gonna like say, oh, in my 38 years of life on this earth, um, never heard of executive functions until I got diagnosed, or just before I got diagnosed. My friends were telling me about executive functions. Um, and some of those things are like task initiation and task completion, which are two of the executive functions that I score pretty low on. And so I think part of it is the task initiation, things like being overwhelmed by a big project, or having a little bit of fear because I've never done this particular thing before, play into the task initiation thing. And so I have a hard time actually getting started. Um, and then maybe the fact that, like I was mentioning, if I don't get it done before the end of the day, the chances that I will finish that particular project decline. And it just might be part of the ADHD where like my brain tells me to go do something different the next day or make excuses to not go continue working on it because it would be another task initiation type issue to deal with or something like that. Um, so it could very well be related to having ADHD. But because I'm so new in having ADHD and it's been my life story growing up, it's really difficult sometimes to differentiate my experience from the normal experience, right?
Yeah, and that's something I've actually had a couple conversations with my son. We just recently finished getting through diagnosing stuff with him, and he's got level 1 autism and ADHD, but he has an inattentive form, so he doesn't have he doesn't have the hyperactive that's normally associated with it, but he still has that same kind of difficulty initiating task and project completion because various reasons. But it's interesting um, that everybody has this idea of what's normal. And as we are going through all of this paperwork with his psychologist, she's showing this bell curve of things, and I had this kind of realization that normal is there's literally one, as much as there's one person who has the worst day in the world today. There's also only one person who is exactly average. Everybody else kind of lies on that spectrum one way or the other, and so like people like yourself, you know, your normal experience is normal experience for a lot of people, but we have this thought in our mind that we should be this way because this is average or this is normal, when in reality it's like, you know, maybe, and I'm not saying this is true, but maybe you're not the perfect person to be in charge of initiating a task, just for because of those executive function issues associated with ADHD, but you're probably very fabulous at other tasks associated with that, right? Huh.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. And I think with the conversation around neurotypical and or neurodivergent, the things there probably just kind of play into that whole bell curve of like the majority of people, and those people who are considered like neurodivergent fall on the outliers of that particular curve. Um, and so, while I might be on that particular side of the spectrum that is neurodivergent or neurospicy or whatever you like to describe it as, the big thing to remember and keep in mind is that you're not alone, and that there are plenty of people who experience the same things as you, but at the same time, you are a little bit different than a lot of other people. And so some of the things that people want to try to tell you that you should do, or that um, you should be the way that they think you should be, um, you don't have to hold yourself to that, because your brain does work differently. There are too many people that are like, why can't you do this thing? Why can't you remember to check the mail or put the trash by the road, or whatever the thing is that you struggle with. People want to like make a big deal about it, but your brain just might work differently. And so you can't beat yourself up about some of those things. And that's one of the things that I've been learning as I've officially been diagnosed, which was the trigger to like look into a lot of this stuff. I think I've done decently well for myself without knowing that I had ADHD, and I've this new thing that I've learned about recently that I haven't read up on yet because I haven't had the time, is apparently there is a skills regression that happens after you are diagnosed with ADHD, where all those executive functions, um, and the particular skills regress because you're aware of them. And um, anywho, I kind of lost the train of my thought there. But yeah, just looking back on a lot of these things and being been able to just kind of like give myself more grace and forgive myself for some of the things um, that in the past I've kind of like asked myself, oh, why can't you, you know, do this thing, or why are you like this? And it's I learned this because these are things that people with ADHD typically deal with. Um, and so, yeah, it's you're a little bit messy around the house or whatever. It's not the end of the world. So I don't know. I have no idea where I
Yeah.
was going that.
Well, what I was going to say is um with ADHD in particular, there's a lot of people. It's much. There's a much higher association with things like. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna mark that so I can edit it out. Um. Anyway, so with ADHD, there's a higher association with drug and alcohol abuse and higher levels of depression and anxiety and all of these different things. And I think from what the research says is it's a lot of that goes along with the that prior to knowing and understanding that your brain does function a little bit different than maybe average would be considered, you're constantly trying to, well, why can't I do this? I must be a failure, or I must, I'm having difficulty with this. This is what's wrong with me. And so you develop these coping mechanisms that are probably not healthy for you in like the drug and alcohol abuse in particular. But I mean, the mental health aspect of the depression side of it is obviously not good for you either. But uh, my wife actually, as we've been going down this whole route with diagnosing our son, she's been kind of half suspecting that she has ADHD as well, but we haven't gone down the full diagnosis route yet. But as she's kind of come uh, aware of that in herself, your talk of kind of the skills regression kind of really pulls true, because in her case it's a holy crap, I can relax, I am this way and it's okay for me to be this way, you know. And yeah, it really is like, does it really matter if all of the clothes aren't picked up, or does it really matter if you say, you know what, I'm terrible at making sure I get the garbage out to the curb. Can that be your job instead of my job if you have a significant other, or all of these things that are all legitimate coping strategies that don't require you to push yourself beyond your capacities.
Yeah, there are a lot of different strategies that you can use to help with a lot of the uh, we'll call them deficiencies, because I can't think of anything more accurate. But uh, the big thing for me is just don't beat yourself up, right? Like it's not going to make the ADHD go away, um, or anything like that. And you know, I uh, I wish your wife the best on her self discovery journey. I think that it's been one of the better things that I've done is to just reflect and see what it is that kind of like makes me tick. Um, and so just knowing that I have ADHD has been beneficial, um, because then I can like go, oh, you know, not trying to make excuses, but I have an excuse. This is the why these things are this way. And instead of just beating myself up over it, I can go, okay, well, I'm weak at that. How can I make myself stronger? Uh, versus when I'm blaming myself for everything that I'm not doing right. All I'm doing is like when I was a kid, my stepfather um, was the person who disciplined me, and it was a lot of physical discipline. And so I would get spanked or whooped or whatever it is that you call it. Um, and of course, as a kid, that would make me cry. And he used to say, "You better stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about." Meaning, if I don't stop crying, I'm going to get beat some more. I don't want to say beat as in I was abused as a child or anything. They were spankings, they, like on the butt or whatever. So um, it is what it is. But it always was like that never made sense to me. You just hit me, so I cry. And now you're telling me that if I don't stop doing the thing that you cause, you're going to do the thing again, make me stop. But it was what you did that made me start to begin with. So that's kind of like the same thing that I think about when it's blaming myself for why I'm not good enough at the thing is all I'm doing is trying to beat myself better, uh, metaphorically, I guess. It's just like do the thing that you didn't do right to begin with. Go just be better. Not productive. It's not helpful. But now that I know that I'm weak at something, I can go, oh, what are some strategies? Let's go look it up on the internet. How can I get better at remembering to take the trash to the curb on the right night? Oh, set a calendar reminder or something. Okay, that helps. What happens if I forget? Oh, there's strategies for associating the day of the week with something else that's going on in your life. And so there was a little bit of time that like I would go play disc golf on Tuesdays, and so my habit that I was trying to build at the time was if after I come home from playing disc golf, take the trash to the curb. Um, that worked out for a little bit until I stopped playing disc golf, and then I would forget again. Not to mention there was a bug with my phone that would like delay my notification to take the trash to the curb by about 24 hours, which was not helpful because by the time it actually showed me my notification, the trash had already ran. But
Yeah,
yeah, anyway,
based on our pre-show conversation, I guess this is where I should jump on you and say you should get yourself an iPhone instead, and then you just have other annoying things.
yeah. Um, I won't go down that rabbit hole, but I do not like iOS, the operating system that's on the phone. It's just that doesn't click with me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's where we could go down a whole nother ADD sort of track about why whatever. Um, but I keep thinking about this. Had a couple experiences this week that this kind of reminds me of, and so you ever heard the Einstein's? I believe it was Einstein's quote where if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will go through its whole life thinking it's useless or it's stupid or something. I forget the exact quote, but have you heard that before?
Yeah, I've read that somewhere. I don't remember where I read or heard that, but yeah, I've heard it, and I don't know who it's attributed to.
I'm pretty certain it's Einstein, but don't quote me on that because I'll get canceled if I'm wrong. But anyway, uh, so we went up to Calgary this early this week to deliver some stuff, and we went to the science museum there, and they had a Leonardo da Vinci exhibit going on, right? And so we're walking around this Da Vinci exhibit and looking at all of these things, and the man was just extremely prolific. And I got to thinking, like, there's some people claim people like Da Vinci and other crazy artists like him probably either had autism or ADHD or something like that, and that's where I think if we were all average, probably nothing would ever happen in the world, like because if everybody has a specific set of skills, and if you don't look at things from a different perspective, you're never going to see different possibilities. And so like with ADHD in particular, I know it's associated with things like that hyper focus stuff. Back when I had Brian Housewort on from Housemaid, that's he has ADHD as well, but he described being able to he's learned how to surf the crest of the hyper focus, right? Like it's like once you get hyper focused on something, you can kind of use that to your advantage, but you have to be aware of that as a possibility. And again, that might not be everybody's case, but everybody has their superpower, and if you don't try to figure it out, you might end up feeling like the fish who's asked to climb the tree.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Have not harnessed the power of my hyper focus the way that Brian has. I see some of the things on his Instagram. I just started listening to his podcast, and so like some amazing things that he's accomplished. But I being aware that um, of the hyper focus can definitely be helpful. Um, Everything's 2020 in hindsight, so like I can look back and see all the times that like, oh, I was definitely hyper focused in these situations. Um, because things make sense now that I know that I have the tendency to either be completely distracted or hyper focused, and I can look back at those times and be like, yeah, that's why I probably played video games for 18 hours straight without getting up, is I just was hyper focused, right? So um yeah, just I haven't been able to, or maybe I have, I don't know. Maybe my career has been successful because of times of hyper focus, or I used um my distraction, my jumping around from thing to thing. Maybe that was the superpower for me, being able to multitask. Nobody can actually multitask. I've learned that too. Um, but being able to jump quickly between things, I guess, can potentially be helpful. I don't know.
Well, it's like that whole jack of all trades, right? Jack of all trades, master of none. Uh, I know it made the social media rounds every once in a while. Have you heard the rest of that saying? Everybody knows the
Yeah,
jack of all trades, master of none.
yeah, but then the rest of it's something like is often better than a master of none or something like that, or a master of one.
Yeah, but jack of all trades, master of none is often better than the master of one. And that's, I mean, there are definitely things where you have to be a master at it, and maybe you don't have to be a master at that one thing, but like brain surgery, for example. Like if I need brain surgery, I don't want a jack of all trades. I I want the master of brain surgery. Uh, but but then, I mean, keeping doctors in mind, if you go into the ER, yeah, it's probably better to have a jack of all trades type of guy there, because one day you could have somebody who's thrown up and the next day you could have somebody who has a gunshot wound, and those are two completely different scenarios. And it's the same in our day-to-day work or shops too, depending on what you want to do. If you're in your shop and you're a master of hand cut dovetails, but you need to fix a tool, you know there needs to be a certain jack of all tradesness. And I think that in and of itself, being able to pick up a dozen different skills, maybe you're not a master at any of them, but because you have a broad skill set, you're able to do more, which makes you more productive in the end too. And that's what I was going to say for you. Like, it's probably why you've been doing good at work, is because maybe that broad skill set is what's done it for you, eh?
Yeah, maybe.
So in your shop time, you said your lathe is kind of the current obsession. Have you how long have you been doing the making thing in the shop?
Um, so if you say in the shop, as in like having something that's not like in my house, then probably only since I moved into this current house. I've been interested in things for a really long time, and I've been making things. I guess you could go with the cliche. I've been making my whole life, but I guess the kind of going back to the jumping around from thing to thing, it's always been like, oh, I've made a little bit of this or a little bit of that, and so I don't have a lot of skill in anything, um, which potentially can be limiting if you're, maybe trying to sell your stuff um, or become popular for something. Like if you listen to some of the bigger podcasts, the people who have a focus on their YouTube channel, they're the ones that made it, right? Like the more variety of things that you do, if you don't niche down, then you're not going to make it. And I guess, you know, that's kind of one of the issues for me is I don't have an interest in niching down, even if I were to make videos. And then when it comes to like trying to sell things, I don't want to make the same thing over and over and over again. Um, maybe I can sell some pins because I almost feel like even though I'm making pins over and over and over again, there's a little bit of difference to them to where it's still fun and enjoyable. Maybe that'll go away if I make too many of them. I don't know. But like my stuff is not the level of what a lot of these other more niche makers are doing. I don't have the 3D modeling skills to make a whole bunch of cool products to 3D print. I don't have the woodworking skills to wow people or uh, metalwork or blacksmithing skills to do those kinds of things. And so it's like I've been wanting to fund my making through selling things that I make because making things is expensive. Um,
It
I
is
can't
that.
seem to figure out how to actually sell anything yet.
Well, and this is this is something I've been thinking of recently, is because I do sell some stuff, and I think my shop is actually usually kind of, it's a portion of my income, but not enough to really say, oh yeah, I'm going to jump into making full time as a career. But your point of I don't like making the same thing over and over. I hate it. Like I have this real estate agent that orders like 50 cutting boards from me at a time, and gives them out as closing gifts, right? And every time I think to myself, I don't want to, It's like, oh yes, this will be good because this basically pays for all of my utilities for the year, and it's 17 hours worth of work. And then by the time I'm done, I'm so done with it that I just like, I'm never going to do this again. And then the next year rolls around and it's the same thing. It's like, oh, well, I guess, yeah, the money's good. I'll do it. But I think it's important for people to remember, though, too, that, yeah, making is an expensive hobby. No argument from me there, too. But I intentionally called this podcast name the Workshop Therapy because that's where I find my therapy. Like I've done some counseling and stuff like that, and if I'm feeling stressed and I'm feeling burnt out and I'm feeling tired of dealing with crap, I go out to my shop, and even if I just sweep the floor or just make a few hand plane shavings for the heck of it, just mess up a piece of wood, I find that relaxes me, and that sets sets me in a better place. And so sometimes I think we get focused on the, oh, this is expensive, maybe I should try to sell something. And you know, going to cost you $150 to go to counseling every week, or $150 out in your shop. If you find that that's worth it, then go ahead and do that and don't worry about it. At least
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
it's a good way to think about it. But I go back and forth about whether or not I want to make money. I think the main goal that I would have, and know if you sure you listen to Making Our Way podcast with like Christy Simon. She talks about, in her Christy Steinman CPA Instagram, she talks about hobby versus business. And I know that my stuff right now is like firmly in the hobby side. Even if I were to sell some things, I don't think that I would sell enough to have the government consider what I'm selling making money and a business. And so like the, my goal would be to figure out a way that I could have just enough sales to make it a business, like a profitable business, but like I wouldn't be trying to get rich off of it. It would just be like, oh, I can write off my tools and even the stuff that I'm making with the materials, the consumables, um, and pay for itself at the same time. That way, I have a free hobby. That's that would be the goal if I could make it there. Um, I don't know if that'll happen or not, but right now I'm still at the point to where I don't care. Um, the the whole point is that I want to continue to enjoy my hobby. Um, if there came a time that making was no longer fun because I have to do all this stuff, then you've got to shed that. Um, Quick question: can you hear the stuff going on in my background? I don't know
No,
if you can hear it. Okay, cool.
no, yeah, that's actually where my shop is. I've been self-employed for since I graduated university, basically. So I've my whole life I've had real jobs, but jobs, but for the vast majority of my life, I've been self-employed, and so there's that. For me, when I started getting into woodworking a little bit more seriously, I did intentionally kind of push it towards that level of this is a business, and as a result, yeah, I can. I can write off stuff. And I one of my main reasons for even starting social media type of things was to build stuff for myself, but make a video of it and then say, "Oh, this is advertising." This was an advertising expense, just a demonstration of what I'm capable of doing. But yeah. Anyway, I think there's so many different ways to do things. Like you can just do it for my workshop is my therapy, and that's totally okay. If it costs you some money, everybody has some sort of hobby that costs them money, whether it's video games or woodworking or cocaine. And woodworking may be as expensive as cocaine, but it's not gonna land you in prison. Mm.
Yeah. When you said cocaine, it reminded me of I don't know if you're familiar with Magic the Gathering. There's
Yep.
a there was this like meme that was going around. It was like, yeah, just do drugs. It's cheaper. Um, but yeah, I think one of the like you said, people spend money on some hobby somehow, and some people go to the movies every weekend, and that's that brings them joy, and they're spending whatever on the movies and all the snacks and things involved, and whatever. I think with the maker ADD thing, and wanting to do all the things, that's where it gets extra expensive, right? Because now, I want to buy the tools to do woodworking and the wood to do the woodworking. Then I also want to buy the tools to do leatherworking, and then the leather to do the leatherworking, and all the other things. And you know, sometimes I just got to tell myself like, okay, stay in these realms because yeah, you might have had a lot of fun blacksmithing at Maker Camp, but for you to get into blacksmithing, you're going to have to buy all that blacksmithing stuff. And I, I just, I can't afford that. Plus to keep my woodworking stuff. And then, you can't have them in the same space. So, you know, how are you going to pay for the extra space for the blacksmithing stuff and whatever? And so like, yeah, it's not saying that my making hobby is more expensive than everybody else's, but like sometimes it feels that way. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, especially when well, I was gonna say, if you want to get into blacksmithing, you just go harass Chris Powell a bunch, and you know, go over and hang out with him, I guess. But no, what, what I what we really need to do though is you and I, we need to figure out a way that we can just win the lottery, and then you just don't have to worry about it. It's just, yeah, I got millions in the bank. I can go buy all the tools. That's
Yeah, that'd be
that's where
really
I want to
nice.
be at.
I have one small issue though. In order to win the lottery, you got to play the lottery, and I don't play the lottery because
That's my problem too. I'm never going to win because I've never bought a ticket. It's um back when I was still practicing, um talking to practicing as a chiropractor, I was talking to everybody every day and blah blah blah, and you always get certain topics of conversation with some people, and you get on to the, oh, my pain would all go away if I didn't have to go to work. And so I made the deal with I don't know, probably 50 or 60 different people. Is like, well, I'll write you a prescription to win the lottery, and you split it with me 50-50, and then we'll both be good. And so one time this guy, he made me write it out on a sticky note and for him and everything, right? So I give it to him, and about a month later, he comes in and he plunks a $2 coin down on the counter, and I totally forgot about it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, your account's good. You don't owe me anything." He's like, "Oh no, this is your half of the winnings. Kind of expected to win more though." It's like, well, if I knew you were going to pay up, I was hoping you'd win more too.
Yeah, I don't know. I just can't bring myself to play the lottery because it just feels like giving my money away. Because you're so scratch offs, those are I can sometimes justify those because you get the experience of scratching off the ticket or whatever, and you're a lot more likely to win that than like the Mega Millions or Powerball or whatever those other games are called. Um,
Yeah, when the odds are
yeah,
100 million against, it's like, yeah, you're not winning.
yeah, for sure. And then like, there's no fun in playing those games, especially all the people who take the easy way out and they're like, oh, I just want computer pick for everything. Like, you're not even picking your numbers. Like, what's the point in this game? I mean, sure, you've got the dream of winning millions of dollars and keeping half of it, but um, the odds are just super low. Um, at least my mom, her vice is playing bingo, um, and she would go fairly often um, if money's okay at the time. And so like I used to kind of complain about it. But then I was like, you know what? That's her hobby. That's the thing she does to go have fun. And I can at least justify that one because, she does go to the bingo hall for who knows how many hours, like 4 or 5 hours at a time, and socializes and plays this game. I can't say anything because my hobby is more expensive than hers. Yeah.
Yeah, I s yeah, my wife and I argue every once in a while about whose hobby is more expensive, and it's definitely mine. I'll fully admit that, but she says that I have more tools than she does, and I disagree because I count. She likes sewing and she likes painting and drawing, and so I'm like, I I have bigger tools, but you have like 100 paintbrushes and hundreds of needles, and I will fully admit that mine's more expensive, but yeah, we get into that argument every once in a while.
Yeah.
Anyway,
You're really
we should
pedantic. I love it.
well, that's what a good marriage is based on, is you know pointless arguments that nobody's going to win and don't actually matter. You're in a good place when you can argue about who has the more expensive hobby and still be friends. You're not arguing about who's did you look at that girl or did you look at that guy or whatever. But anyway, so we should probably wrap up here. But do you have any parting words of wisdom for us all?
Parting words of wisdom. Probably not. I don't really consider myself the wisest person in the world, but you know, I guess just to double down on the thing that I've mentioned a few times during our conversation, give yourself grace. Uh, you know, don't beat yourself up over things that you probably can't help. Whatever it is
Uh,
for whoever is hearing that, just yeah, give yourself grace.
that is probably, I mean, that's something that's probably easy to say, very difficult to implement, but probably about as profound as it needs to be, though, too. Because you're right, everybody makes mistakes, and that's okay. So giving yourself some grace to understand that everybody does make mistakes, and conversely extend that grace to everybody else as well,
Oh yeah,
because the guy that cut you off in traffic didn't cut you off in traffic because he's a jerk any more than you were a jerk when you cut the other guy off in traffic the other day either, right? It's just we
yeah,
all make mistakes, we're all focused on something, Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you coming on and having a good chat about ADHD and all of those, all of the other stuff that we talked about. So, why
Yeah,
don't you
thanks for
tell
having me.
everybody where they can find you?
Um, so pretty much only on Instagram at the moment. EarlIII.XYZ. Um, that is also a website that you could go visit. I've done absolutely nothing with it except for mention my Instagram and YouTube channel that doesn't have a single video on it. So maybe one day there will be some videos, but at the moment, um, it's just Instagram.
Well, you've heard it all. You've heard the socialists, so go check out Earl there, and we'll head over to the after show. So, if you found anything from this episode to be helpful and you want to reinforce it for yourself, I'd like to invite you to share it with a friend in the next 24 hours. That'll help reinforce it in your mind and it'll help those around you, which is always a good thing. So, thanks again for listening. And now I'd like to say thank you to all the amazing patrons of the Workshop Therapy podcast. You guys make the show possible. If you're finding the show helpful and you want to support it, there are a few tiers, including a simple $1 a month option to just say thanks. For $5 a month, you can get access to the patrons only feed that has a pre-show and a post-show, in addition to the regular podcast all in one feed. You all know that the good stuff happens after the official mics are off, right? If you can't support financially, I totally understand, but I'd love it if you left a 5-star review or told a friend about the podcast. If you have any questions or feedback, I'd love to hear that as well. Send it to questions@workshoptherapypodcast.com and I'll get it on the show. I want to say thank you to all the patrons of the Workshop Therapy podcast, but especially to the founding fathers, and they are Mr. Matthew Serio from Argiano Serio, Mr. Brad Harrison of Brad's Customs, Mr. Keith Drennan of Blackthorn Concepts, Mr. Eric Peterson of Overall Maker Works, Mr. Brandon Millichamp of Tectonic Creations, and the one and only the Grant Alexander. So a special thank you to the founding fathers, and thank you to everybody who supports and shares the Workshop Therapy podcast.